On this edition of the program, a review of the most talked about book in America, Original Sin by Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper. Chris Cillizza has read it. He discusses, as well as some of the other elements surrounding the book, including the authorship of Jake Tapper himself. All that plus updates on the big, beautiful bill that Donald Trump went to go sell. And Kristi Noem doesn't know what habeas corpus is. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Welcome, everybody, to the Politics program for May 21st, 2025. Your old pal, Justin Robert Young, joining you here in Austin, Texas. And we're not going to waste any time. We have a great conversation with Chris Cillizza in a second. Stay tuned for the update, for all the thoughts on the big, beautiful bill, and a few interactions with the Trump cabinet in the Capitol. But let's go ahead and get right to Cillizza. Here we go. Well, we have plenty to talk about, and I swear this interview will only partially discuss CNN, and that is because we have Chris Cillizza back on the show, and a lot of news to go over. Well, first, welcome back. How you been?
Thank you, my friend. I always say, like, being asked once is nice. Being asked twice means that I can't have been that bad the first time.
Well, you know, I think that there's a few. Initially, I wanted to have you on because Original Sin comes out today, yesterday, if you're hearing this on Wednesday.
There it is.
You have read it.
I have read it. I have my fully marked up copy. I'm writing about it for my Substack right now. I'm trying to write, like, here are the things you need to, if you don't want to read the whole book, here's what you need to know. Like, yeah. I
have speed run through 10 chapters this morning on the audiobook. So it is literally Jake Tapper just speaking at 1.5 speed. But I wanted to have you on for that. And then we get the news on Sunday that Joe Biden announcing that he has cancer.
Yes.
And I had very mixed emotions. Obviously, the first and the most human, and the one that I want to center yet again as we get into this conversation, is that cancer is awful. I've had cancer in my family. It is an awful thing to go through. I wish nothing but sympathy and empathy for the Biden family, and I hope that his treatment is effective and speedy. And
there has to be an and.
There has to be questions about the medical transparency.
States.
Yes.
And not just that, Justin, just to make, I know we're going to go more into this, but just one thing.
Yeah.
Republicans always say, like, why don't you ever believe anything Donald Trump says? And I said, well, because his track record is that he lies all the time. So, like, if you have a friend who's always like, hey, man, I'm going to pay for you to go to the Bahamas next week, and they never do, at some point you're like, I don't think that friend is, like, reliable. We're not going to the Bahamas. Donald Trump lies all the time. So when he says stuff, I think you have to be skeptical of it given his past track record. Biden, we know definitely, if you read this or listen to this book, and if you read the reporting in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Axios, you know, there was reporting on this. Mm-hmm. They clearly worked to keep what seemed to be an acceleration of decline starting in around 2022 from the public, the media, and other less senior White House staffers. So, like, given that, I don't see how you cannot say, like, okay, well, let's talk to doctors about, like, this prostate diagnosis because he had a physical in 2024, which is what I've tried to do. I mean, neither you nor I are medical doctors, right? So it's like, I just take what people who are smart and who I talked to a urologist yesterday. He said it was, his words, very unlikely that had they not given Biden a PSA test in, the common blood test to see if you have prostate cancer in that 2024 examination, this would have been found. And it turns out they didn't give him one. So it's like, why not?
And all I would have to say to point to in terms of how much credulity you should point to this in terms of just saying, oh, well, that's an announcement, let's just move on, is that on the show, as illustrated in this book, that Joe Biden and his orbit watch the closest. Morning Joe.
Yep.
They have a doctor, and not just any doctor.
Correct.
But it is the doctor of I don't know how many Emanuel brothers there are.
It's three, I think, each more successful than the last.
Which if you are not aware, there is Rahm Emanuel, former Obama staffer, then mayor of Chicago, now angling for whatever. He's going to run again for something. But by the way, he's in the press. Ari Emanuel, who not only is a power broker for WME, a super agent, but also the Ari from Entourage.
Correct.
That character is based on him when he was an agent.
And a billionaire.
Billionaire, Democratic mega donor, one of the people that helped push Joe Biden off the stage. And then this brother. And so the brother shows up. The brother's a doctor. The brother says it is highly unlikely that this was not in his body for up to 10 years from the point that it was revealed to the public. And then you read Original Sin, and this is pointed out in Axios literally just as we are going live by Alex Thompson, that there's a history of hiding cancer from the Bidens, that they did it with Beau.
Absolutely.
They had a doctor come out and say that he had a clean bill of health when he had a surgery scar on his head.
Correct. He had brain cancer.
He had brain cancer.
They chose not to say. So this is my thing, right? It's like, again, it's like we are all judged by our past track record, right? And I think that's why you have to be really careful with what you do in that track record. And their track record is not one, and they're far from the only people, by the way. It's not like Donald Trump's history of transparency on medical stuff. He's terrible on that front.
Ronald Reagan, John F. Kennedy, but the list goes on and on. Of presidents that have been less than revelatory.
Exactly. And it's Republicans, Democrats. I mean, it's like, I still remember Patsy Mink, who nobody remembers, but she's a member of Congress from Hawaii. She was a Democrat. It came out that she had died like 3 weeks before her family announced she was dead. It was like, dude, she's a sitting member of Congress. Kay Granger from Texas
was in a home.
She was in a memory care home while she was allegedly still serving. So, but everybody does this. My point is, given the track record of the Bidens, as you rightly point out, I do not think it is. You just can't take it at face value. I don't have evidence that they hit it. My guess is, it's that old adage: don't ask questions you don't want to know the answers to. Right?
Yeah.
I think there was some of that. Like, they didn't want to know the answers, so they didn't do the test, right? It was like, okay, well, if he does have it, prostate cancer, by the way, they don't usually test for it in a normal man after 75. Yes. Because, doctors don't say this, but the truth of the matter, something else will probably kill you before if you get diagnosed with prostate cancer. It's
going to be so onerous to try and treat a cancer that is probably so slow growing it won't kill you before something else will.
So, but my buddy who I went to college with, this urologist who I interviewed, he's like, look, that is absolutely true. Like, we do not recommend beyond 75. He's like, the problem here is, and I think this is what I keep coming back to, he's the president of the United States. This isn't just like a random 81-year-old, at the time, 81-year-old guy. Yeah. Right?
Like, with a family history of cancer.
Right. So that's what I just keep coming back to. And it's hard because I think the way you started, Justin, a lot of people don't want to do the and, right? You expressed, I think, rightly how we all feel, which is like, I think everyone's family, if not themselves, has been touched by cancer. It's an awful disease. I wish we could find a cure for it. And no one wishes this on anyone. I'd say the same thing of Donald Trump. At the same time, it is impossible to separate that from this. Right? Yeah. From everything in here, from everything we know about an active cover-up of his condition. And it's like, these stories don't exist in a vacuum, right? Like, they exist in the context in which we live. And the context is where you have to have the and.
The other side of this that I immediately leapt to, especially as some of the expert testimony starts to come out throughout the media about what it takes to treat something like this. And when you hear that some of the treatments for the specific cancer that he has results in memory fog, forgetting, losing your train of thought, having, listing out a lot of the things that are described in this book as cognition, a lack of cognition. You have to wonder whether or not, as well reported as this book is, and as much as it seeks to make sense of what we saw by way of testimony inside, they describe, there's been many words to describe the inner circle of the Biden world. The poobahs is something that's been repeated a lot. This book chooses to go with the Politburo because of its, insular nature. It describes Joe Biden as no more than a senior member of a Politburo of 5 people that made the decisions for everything. And so when you talk about who was the president, this is their answer, at least this book's answer to it. But you wonder whether or not they knew that there was a thing that they could not talk about. He was getting treatment for it. That's part of the explanation for why we see such a dramatic fall off beyond age, which is certainly an understandable thing for it. But, I'm reading this book and I wonder, as revelatory as it is this 75% of the story?
I was going to say, you're reading the book in the light of this revelation on Sunday that isn't in the book.
Is not in the book.
But that would explain a lot of, because in the book, right, what's clear is as early as 2015, 2016, when Beau Biden dies, there's a struggle, right? As I think a lot of people understand. But even in 2020, there's a scene in the book talking about, it was the COVID year, obviously, so they didn't have really a convention. And the Biden people came up with this idea that, as a way for him to show sort of empathy and authenticity, he would sit in an office at his house and they'd have a bunch of screens with regular people telling him about their concerns, right? And that they would use that, they'd cut a bunch of that and they'd use it for the convention.
Because if you guys remember, 2020, obviously super weird year, but this was going to be the convention that rewrote all the rules for all the conventions because it was be a made for television spectacle. It was not like the Republicans that essentially just had one room where they had people go up and make speeches. This was fully produced and this was going to be part of it.
Exactly. And what the book reveals is they got hours of tape and it was basically unusable, that Biden looks totally out of it. He's not following conversations. And they wound up using snippets of hours. They used 20 seconds of. So there's some evidence there in 2020. But what I kept taking from the book is, mid 2022, it appears as though things start to go rapidly downhill. And to your point, there's not really an explanation in the book, right? It's documented repeatedly in 2022, early 2023, and then throughout 2023 and 2024, cabinet officials, Democratic elected officials, people who have no reason, I don't think, to just badmouth Joe Biden and badmouth him, are having these interactions with him that are not typical. But there is no diagnosis or reason offered, right, in the book. And so, this urologist I talked to, he's look, the issue is the way that you treat aggressive prostate cancer is you don't do surgery because it's already spread. Yeah. You don't do radiation. It's already spread. What you do is you basically suppress testosterone. Because testosterone drives the growth. And he's one of the effects of suppressing testosterone we've seen over and over again is exactly your point. It makes cognitive issues worse. It makes you be more out of it. It makes you forget things. So it's
it makes you fall down more.
Golly, coincidence doesn't equal causation. Do you know what I mean? I don't know that that's the case, but my God, that is one hell of a big coincidence that around 2022, he started to suffer this clear erosion of cognitive abilities that directly correlate to the erosion of cognitive abilities that would happen if you were being treated with a lowering of testosterone to deal with prostate cancer. But man, that gets us into an even bigger scandal, which is did the president have cancer during his term and they didn't tell us?
Which is the larger question. And that gets you to this point. And when the cancer is announced at the level that it is announced, which again, and let me play devil's advocate. If we're sitting here saying, oh, he lied about this, he lied about that, he lied about that, then how do we know that he didn't lie about what he is saying right now? And that, I mean, my argument would be, I don't think he has much of a reason to lie about the severity of his cancer. Traditionally, a politician will downplay something as opposed to play it up.
I agree, but the timing of it, like, look, let's use the last 5 days as an example. Did the Trump people give Axios her audio to supercharge the release of this book and raise questions about Joe Biden? Yes,
almost
1,000%.
Yes.
It also seems to me, however, much more than just a funny coincidence that on the Sunday before this book comes out, all of a sudden Joe Biden 2 days before that had got this aggressive prostate cancer diagnosis. Like, it's possible it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
I just have spent so much, maybe people just roll their eyes and say that I'm being too cynical, but I've just spent a long time in politics timing stuff like this, not the severity of it, but they could have released this 2 weeks from now. They could have probably released it a month from now. They're releasing it then to, I think, at least create some level of, okay, well, let's not shit on this guy too much because he has cancer.
Well, and then there's politicians' message on Sundays. It is just a thing that is bred into them. That's the Sunday shows are the things that people message on. Like, the reason why on the Substack, for the Substack paying people, I watch the Sunday shows not because I think that they're good or they're important or whatever, but if you want to know what they want you to know, that is the way that you find out. And so messaging. it is such a political tell that you would put a thing out on a Sunday as opposed to a Monday morning, as opposed to something like that.
Do you think they were like, we have to announce this Sunday at 3:30? I mean, well, if you think that, explain to me why it had to happen at that time. I mean,
it's because they wanted it to be done after the Sunday shows, because they wanted all that to be done, then them to have the last word. Joe Biden has cancer, so nobody can talk through it.
Right.
And so that'll be the big thing. Now, this has been pointed out by a few people that if what they wanted was to blunt the Her tapes, Original Sin, they wanted, as David Axelrod came out, one of the chief critics, whose memorial is in the books, who said that maybe we should be talking about this a little softer in light of the cancer diagnosis. It seems to have had the opposite effect, because we are talking about it maybe now more than we would otherwise.
I don't know if you get this, but I definitely get this from the commenters. I always separate the commenters from the subscribers, because I think commenters are, they may well be subscribers, but it's like a different subset of people, like the kind of person who comments. But I got a lot of yesterday. I did a video early Monday morning saying, I disagree with David Axelrod. Because to your point, Axelrod basically said, we should take it easy on him. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically it. And I was like, look, two things can be true. This is awful that Joe Biden has cancer, and there are real and serious questions that at least from 2022 to 2024, there was an active cover-up on the behalf of the White House to keep his condition from the public, the media, and members of the Democratic Party. The first thing doesn't cancel out the second thing. It doesn't, like, to me, like, I always say, like, for my Democratic friends out there, and I know they say this is whataboutism, put the shoe on the other foot. Imagine this was Donald Trump we were talking about, and Donald Trump is out of office. He served a term, and there are questions about his cognitive abilities going on with reporting that suggests there may have been a cover-up. And Donald Trump announces in 2025, I have prostate cancer. Would our Democratic friends say, well, no need to look into the cognitive ability? There's just no chance they would, nor should they. They're separate issues. We can walk and chew gum. You can hold sympathy for Joe Biden. The guy has been through a lot. He has had a blessed, but also in many ways a cursed life. And also, He was the president of the United States running for a second term, and he would have kept running if he had not been forced out of the race, as we've talked about, and as is documented in this book. The idea that Joe Biden was like, you know what, for the good of the country, I'm getting out is total bullshit. That was never the case. But the point is, he would still be running. He is still convinced, as he said on The View, that he would have won the race, and he wasn't surprised Kamala Harris would have lost. So it's like, given all of that, you just can't ignore it. There are 45 people who have been president of the United States in history. It's the most powerful job in the world. If for at least half of his term, there were real questions among people who liked Joe Biden about his acuity, the fact that he now has cancer doesn't change any of that. Nor should it.
Well, and the recorded pattern of masking medical stuff. And of using medical tragedy to personal advantage. And this is where we get into some of the uglier, but I think undeniable parts of Joe Biden's biography. But he's never been far away from talking about medical tragedies in his family or to himself for his own political gain. It's by his own admission, a huge part of why he is and who he is. And they have used it as a shield and a weapon at oftentimes.
And the thing to that point is, I always say this, it's like, I totally understand why the story of the death of his wife and his daughter, why the struggles of Hunter, Bo's death, I totally understand why that would be part of any story, particularly a politician who lives a public life. But you don't get to use the positives of that and not ever get to use it, not ever have to deal with the negatives, right? You can't use it.
Not ever have it mentioned that he brought cameras into his children's hospital room so he could be sworn in for Congress.
Right.
Like that is.
You don't get to use it as a political prop and then also be immune from criticism that you're using it as a political prop.
Yes.
You don't get both of those things. You can do it. That's fine. That's your right.
He has.
But, and this is the thing, I think, one thing that I think I was thinking about this reading the book, and I've been thinking about this a lot with Biden in the last, 6 months. I always thought the perception of him, particularly in the last decade, pre him being elected president, the perception of him, mostly when he was VP, was like, oh, Uncle Joe, what a good guy. Irish Catholic, bless your heart. I only keep a couple books on my desk. This is the other book that I keep on my desk. What It Takes by Richard Ben Cramer, right?
We're going to go there.
This was from the 1988 campaign. That also involved Joe Biden. Just shows you how old he is. If you read just this book is ridiculously long. The print is like tiny. If you read just the Biden sections, that Uncle Joe, like, hail fellow, well met thing is part of his personality. But he has always also been very, and this is not unique in politicians, very egotistical, very, very self-centered, extremely self-confident. And so the image of him is like, he's just look at him. He's just Obama's sidekick. Big effing deal.
Yeah.
That was never really who the guy is. This is a person who has been running for office and then for president for 5 decades.
Yeah.
Like, he is not this avuncular, he never was, right? And so in some ways, I think a lot of Democrats are like, wait, but this isn't the Joe Biden. This Joe Biden in What It Takes is a much more accurate portrayal of him than during the Obama years. Like, the truth is, he's always been a guy looking for self-advantage. He's always been selfish. And I think the book documents, like, the decisions made by Jill and Joe Biden are, like, fundamentally selfish. He thinks he's the best. He likes being president. She likes being first lady. I get it.
There is a core element of us against the world and What It Takes.
Yes.
What It Takes paints, dare I say, a sociopathic picture of Joe Biden in terms of his drive for power and what he is willing to do for it. But part of that story in 1988 is Jill becoming very, very black-pilled on the idea that the press is out to get them because
100%.
Joe got hammered out of that race by a plagiarism scandal that he saw as totally invented and blah, blah, blah. He didn't take any blame for himself. He totally blamed it on the press. Jill very much took that as the lesson. And I do think that if you're going to read any sympathetic motivations into the behaviors that you're describing, is that when you do believe that you are the underdog, when you do believe that everybody is against you and nobody believes in you, and this is always, even from the position of the presidency of the United States, you feel that everybody is against you, and, and you are just a small, pitiful underdog that's gonna punch up and get righteous retribution, then it's amazing what you can justify. Up to and including, I say, totally, without knowing anything, hiding a cancer diagnosis so you can run for a second term and be a cancer haver or survivor at the age of 86 by the time that you finish your second term.
And by the way, everything you just described about victimhood and punching up, that's Donald Trump to a T as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same exact, like the last two presidents of the United States have believed themselves to be victims of, like, I mean, even if you, when you read the relationships, and there's some of this in Original Sin, but there's been a lot of reporting on this, the relationship between the Obamas and the Bidens wasn't as hunky-dory as everybody said. You know, the Bidens felt like they were second-class citizens. And so, I mean, this is a dynamic that goes back Reagan and George H.W. Bush. I mean, it's always the case.
Yeah.
But yes, he has always had this chip on his shoulder. He has always believed, I'm being underestimated and I'm capable of much more. And she has fed that. And that runs through the whole book. And that, I think, explains a whole hell of a lot. They were convinced, despite lots of evidence, I would say, particularly after the June 27th debate, they were convinced he was the only candidate who could win. And that specifically Harris could not and would not win. And that comes through very clearly in the book. And I mean, people don't change. Read the Biden chapters and what it takes. It'll tell you everything you need to know about how we got here.
I'm only 10 chapters in. I've already gotten my favorite small nugget from this book that I hope will be bested, because this one's pretty good. And that is that Hunter Biden on his book tour wanted to go to black churches in South Carolina because he believed his crack addiction would go over
relatable.
Well.
It was
relatable to black churches in South Carolina.
Unbelievable.
Which we were spared one of the greatest unintentional comedy moments of all time from that not happening. What else from the book? Small little moments or tidbits.
The Hunter stuff is brutal, right? Like it's if Joe Biden has a victim complex, Hunter Biden has a victim complex plus 10, right? It's like, dude, you were talk about born on third base and thinking you hit a triple. Like, come on, bro. Like, people aren't buying your art because you're an amazing artist. They're buying your art because your name is Biden. Like, you're not a success.
Because your father was the president. And by the way, your art doesn't sell now. I wonder why. Did you become a bad artist?
Right. You're not like a genius deal maker with Russia. Your last name is Biden. Like, I mean, it is so that portrayal and his. The three people who really come across, in my mind, incredibly poorly in the book. Then I got one other episode for you that I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
Jill Biden comes across terribly because she's just a total enabler, shuts out anyone who's not telling him what he wants to hear, keeps a lot of things from Biden. Mm-hmm. Hunter Biden, same thing.
Well, her chief of staff, too. You can always tell.
Bernal. Yes.
Bernal. You can always tell. You know, imagine any of these books, and I would say Fight and Revenge and everything, all these books, and I love these books. I am a student of these books. But the way that you can best understand them if you've not been a reporter is think about the most office drama moment you've ever had in your life.
Correct.
And then imagine interviewing everybody, and then imagine if you were to interview everybody and say, who's the villain of the story?
Right. Who's the biggest dick?
Right. Who can agree? Right. Yes. Right. And it's like, you can always tell those people, like Jen O'Malley Dillon got it in Fight, and Bernal gets it in this book, that nobody likes Bernal.
No. So, and I didn't really know him. So that was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
He's a Jill Biden staffer, but kind of had, and this is part of, I think, the problem, had sort of poured it over into this massive portfolio where he was like managing the Bidens overall.
Yeah.
Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, and Mike Donlin, who is a consultant who has been in our world forever, but is really, like, I wrote so many times, and let's see if I can find it. I wrote so many times in the book, I bracketed something and I just wrote Donlin ! Because over and over again, he is, first of all, he thought that Trump was going to be in prison in 2024, so they didn't need to worry about him. After the debate, he insisted to Pelosi and anyone who'd asked that the polling was actually good for Biden and that he could win. Again, contra all facts. Like over and over again, he's sort of the villain of the book. The one episode that I found to that end that I found telling, I don't know if you're there yet, but Biden is doing a thing in Pennsylvania. He's still in the race. I think this is post-debate, but pre-July 21st before he gets out. So he's still in the race, that like 3-week period.
Yep.
He's in Pennsylvania and he's with Shapiro. Josh Shapiro. And him and Shapiro do an event, and then Shapiro says something like, hey, do you want to they're in like a coffee place or whatever. And he's like, hey, can you hang out here for a minute? Or do you want to go somewhere else? I want to talk to you. And Biden's like, Joe Biden says, we can stay here. So the press, everybody leaves, right? It's just them. And like Josh Shapiro starts saying like, hey, look, I'm to the president, like, I'm hearing a lot of concern here. And like, I think you need to be out doing more. And Jill Biden is like, all right, well, anyway, we got to go. Yeah. I mean, that's like, the guy is the sitting Democratic governor of the state. You need to win. You Democrats, but you, Joe Biden in particular, have
Scranton
to win.
Joe.
Even if you think even if you don't buy what Shapiro is selling, you sit there for 5 or 10 minutes and you listen. The idea again, and to me, it is so indicative of this attempt to keep any bad news from the president. I mean, one thing that really struck me, I'm trying to figure out. This is how I didn't find Biden himself contemptible in the book. I found him pitiable in the book. He's just kind of there. And what kept going through my head was the Robert Hur description, which Democrats lambasted at the time. Remember, Hur said this, quote, a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
Yeah.
I will be honest, Justin, that's kind of, I didn't leave this book thinking, that son of a bitch, Joe Biden, he lied to the country. He's just kind of like, he's obviously a prime player. He's the president of the United States. But in the book, he's just kind of there. It's like how you talk about like your aging dad. Like, I think it's time and like your dad's there, but you kind of like ignore that he's there. I don't know. Like
I do think that, again, think of the biggest office drama you've had in your life. Think about how you would talk about it. Think about who you would protect and think about who you would blame.
Yeah.
I do think that you have a lot of people that are sympathetic to Joe Biden that are the sources, the backbones of the sources for this story.
Yes.
There are some references to things that we absolutely know are true, which is that especially toward the end, he was really short-tempered with his staff. And they describe in the book that oftentimes he was not given information, not necessarily because they wanted to hide it from him or they felt that he couldn't use it, but just in the process of trying to have meetings, they had to figure out how they were going to say words that wouldn't set him off, that would just lead him to scream and yell. So they would have to call off the meeting, reschedule the meeting, remove the person that pissed him off so they could now try again to just tell him a thing. And when you get to where we are now, where even as he's trying to reemerge, despite the entreaties of people who I think have his best interest at heart, like Steve Shale, who wrote for The Bulwark, saying you need to do more going out to firehouses and bringing them subs and less going on BBC and The View and trying to defend your legacy. Do the things that people want to see you to do. But part of what we see when he does have a microphone in front of his face is he just starts barking about AUKUS and expanding NATO and doing all these things that he is very defensive about. And so I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I'm only 10 chapters in. You've finished it. So,
well, no, I mean, the portrait is, look, again, I just think Joe Biden has always been this guy.
He's that dude.
I would write about it and be like, look, I just like having covered him. Like I think he can be genuinely authentic and warm and he will be the guy who'll be like, oh, your mom is a fan. Give me the phone. Let me call her. Like he does do those things. Like he is like all of us, complicated. None of us are just all good. Most of us are not all good or all bad, right? he always has been not great with staff. He has always thought he was the smartest person in the room and relied on a very small group of people who've been with him since 1987 for advice. Like, these things don't change. People do not change in those major ways. And so it's kind of like, in some ways, Joe Biden has been brought low by the caricature of him as this kind of like, hey, he's just along for the ride. He's just happy to be here. Old Vice President Joe. He's never that. He is not that guy. He was never that guy. The book shows that. And I think anyone who knows anything about him and has covered him already knew that. But maybe it will be new to people who had sort of what I would say is a misguided sense of who he is.
This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go if you want to support the show on the Substack. Get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Thank you to everybody who is a subscriber to the Substack. We normally have an episode that it's exclusive for you. We put this one out for free because of the big news. Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis. Don't know if maybe I should have put that one behind a paywall. People were mad, very mad. Although there are a few things that I didn't mention in Cillizza. So let me get to this. I got a lot of feedback for that episode. Some of it was very angry. And I understand, whenever you go after somebody that is, ex-president, you're going to bring up partisan dander. So I expected that. What I don't know if I did expect was that whenever you talk about a cancer story, you get cancer stories. It's a horrifying disease that has affected so many, including people in my family. That I had my mom. My mom didn't text me about the show. My mom commented on the YouTube. So if you want to join my mom amongst the YouTube commenters, you can head on over to the YouTube and comment. But I texted her based on what she had commented on YouTube about somebody in her life that had tested a certain way for a prostate cancer. And, so we talked about it. I got other emails and people shared their own personal stories about shock diagnosis and losing people to cancer. And I just want to let everybody know, thank you. It is always good to keep front of mind the human toll that a disease like this wreaks, because when we are talking about the combative world of politics, which is often gladiatorial, there are winners and losers. There is an information war that is being fought. People are picking up the Overton window and trying to bash their opponent's head in with it. It is important to understand that these topics are things that matter and that we should be wary of them. So, with that being said, thank you to everybody who wrote in with your cancer stuff, your cancer stories. Shouldn't say stuff, minimizes it. Trying to be better. Thank you for writing in with your cancer stuff, he said very sympathetically. That would be weird. It'd be funny because it's a juxtaposition, not a Justin position. I don't know why I want to be glib with this. It probably shows a deep discomfort I have with serious topics. Should probably go see a shrink about that. But I can only go to a shrink if you pay me. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Let's go over some stories that we didn't have a chance to talk about. But I can only go to a shrink if you pay me. So why don't you pay me? TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Let's talk about some stories we didn't have a chance to get to in our Cillizza conversation. Donald Trump visited Capitol Hill to rally House Republicans behind a sweeping domestic policy bill urging unity amongst warring factions. In a closed-door meeting, he bluntly warned conservatives not to push for deeper Medicaid cuts, saying, "Don't F around with Medicaid," reportedly, and told blue state Republicans pushing for a SALT cap increase to accept the deal that is on the table. That right now is $40,000 for, I think, 4 years, and then it would snap to $30,000 that you'd be able to deduct off your federal tax burden based on your state tax burden. As I understand that, that is roughly 90% of most people in blue states, but still, they're not the people pushing for this. That being said, despite Trump's pressure, key lawmakers, including Representatives Andy Harris and Mike Lawler, remain unmoved, at least as we record this, signaling trouble for Speaker Mike Johnson's goal of a floor vote within 48 hours. While some members showed signs of softening, others, like Representative Thomas Massie, stayed opposed. That's not shocking. The 1,100-page bill includes major tax cuts, defense spending increase, and border policy changes, but would still remove Medicaid coverage for 7.6 people, according to one of the estimates, although whenever you get these things, there's a lot of debate on exactly what it's going to do. Trump made clear that he is growing impatient with holdouts, saying one lawmaker said off the record, he's done with this. Of course, whatever the House votes is going to go to the Senate. The Senate's going to change it, and then they're going to send it back to the House, and the House is going to take a vote on a bill that they like even less than the one that they're putting together right now. So this is being covered in a very dramatic way amongst the congressionally centric press. I don't know if it really is. Now, if you are in the trenches, obviously, this is bloody warfare. Thomas Massie, by the way, told Politico that he thought Trump did a pretty good job talking to the two people that he really needed to talk to, which is the House Freedom Caucus and the SALT Caucus. The reality of this is that they need to do it. Everybody right now is concerned about things that they will be attacked on. What is left unsaid is that they don't have any achievements if they don't pass this. And also, again, it's like, look, the Senate is going to shred this thing. So half the stuff that they're arguing about, they're going to have no choice but to swallow when the Senate sends it back. So it is what it is. My guess, so you have some folks in the House Freedom Caucus that says, you want to know what? This could pass in 2 weeks. I don't know what's going to be different in 2 weeks. I know that Trump wants this voted on as soon as possible. And here's the reason why. Because the longer this lasts, the longer this goes, the less the time the business community has to know for sure that they are investing at certain tax levels and certain regulatory levels. So, for example, right now, we have relatively calm waters compared to the last few months on tariffs. So it looks like there is a certain tariff line that happened with the UK that looks like it's going to happen. We're not going to go below 10% tariffs on other foreign countries. We're going to remain tariff heavy on steel. We're going to remain tariff heavy on cars. It looks like China has dropped down. But generally, certainty. And that's what the business community loves, is certainty. Because certainty means that you're not going to have a random explosion that takes out somebody's balance sheet. That's what happened earlier this year. And by earlier this year, I mean 4 weeks ago. Jeez Louise. That being said, if you understand that the tax environment is going to be where it is right now, if not lower, which is what this bill does, and you understand that regulation is going to be at this level at least for the next 3 years, then, and it passes by this summer, that means that businesses start making decisions on that immediately. They start making plans about it within a quarter. They start making big decisions in 6 months and investing, and then the consumer starts seeing it, whether it's hiring or building or products coming to market within a year. So do the math on that. If this passes this summer, then that means consumers start understanding what it means within a year. So that's next, let's say July. What happens next July? People start tuning in to the midterms. So that's the difference in all this. I don't think that anybody believes that a Republican-controlled House and Senate is going to allow for the Trump tax cuts to expire. Now, there's a lot of debate on whether or not they would like to just do that and then do other stuff. They want to untether this, that, and the other. That's fine. But they're eventually going to do that. What I think the sober-minded folks are going to tell you, if you are on the Republican side, is you want this to happen now, so you are running on a good economy in July. Because if you are not running on a good economy in July, then you're not going to have a good time. I mean, our friend Bill Scher, who was on the show last week, wrote a thing for Washington Monthly, and he said that it is a political loser if Republicans are running on Joe Biden's presidency in the midterms, let alone in 2028. And I agree with him. Despite the fact that we are spending a lot of time talking about it on this show, it's fresh news now. It's not going to be in a year. But I also think it's kind of copium from the Democrats. Of course, the Republicans aren't going to be talking about Joe Biden next year, or at least that's not going to be their main message. That's going to be what Democrats say Republicans are obsessed about. But Republicans are going to be obsessed about the things that Donald Trump won on because it's a copycat league. You want to keep doing the things that won the last person the thing. And that's going to be the economy and the border. If you want inflation and an open border again, then give the Democrats back the wheel. If you want what we have now, a good economy and a closed border, then let us cook. That's the message. But if that happens, you need to have a good economy. So strategically, if you're the Democrats, you want this thing to go as long as possible. Oh boy, do you just, salt. Dig in, man. Keep fighting. Oh, House Freedom Caucus. Oh, you better cut Medicaid even more. Oh, you better cut it. Cut it within an inch of its life. Don't give up. Don't let go of the rope. So, yeah. That's where we are. My suspicion is this will probably pass the House within the next 5 days. I don't know what changes between now and 2 weeks from now, like the House Freedom Caucus wants. Somebody is going to have to eat it. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I guess I'm not really surprised that the Salt Caucus is holding out, but I don't know what they're holding out for. Nor do I really think that that's, I mean, it's certainly not sympathetic to the rest of the country. Secretary of State Marco Rubio defended the Trump administration against claims of global disengagement, citing the fact that he has visited 18 countries in 18 weeks. In a Senate hearing on Tuesday, Rubio faced criticism from Democrats who argued Trump is being manipulated by Putin and promoted a bipartisan Russian sanctions bill led by Senator Lindsey Graham. Rubio acknowledged the value of dialogue with Putin, but warned of consequences if peace talks stall. He wouldn't commit to backing the sanctions bill, noting that Congress acts independently. Rubio defended reforms to USAID or USAID. I know some people get really mad when I call it USAID, calling them necessary despite controversy, and said foreign aid must strengthen U.S. interests. There was also a viral clip of Trump and Chris Van Hollen going back and forth. And that is what it is. Look, you can look up these clips. They circulate on partisan media, and that'll be what it is. I want to talk about this Putin call because Donald Trump, a few weeks ago, said that he was concerned that Vladimir Putin might be tapping him along. So he is having a meeting where he can give you just enough that you can schedule another meeting. But it's not to actually get anything done. It's just tapping along. Tap and tap and tap and tap. And so Monday rolls around. And let's remember the context around the Putin stuff. Ukraine said, we're willing to have a ceasefire. Let's figure out a ceasefire. Putin says, no ceasefire until we talk directly. Let's talk directly. Let's go to Turkey. Ukraine says, okay, let's go to Turkey. Putin's supposed to be there. All of a sudden, Putin's not going to be there. Okay. So we were wondering last week, is Trump going to be mad that Putin's not there? Okay, he's not all that mad. He says, look, I'm going to talk to him Monday on the phone. I'm going to talk to Ukraine first, then I'm going to talk to Putin, and then I'm going to talk to the world community. We're all going to sync up on exactly what happened. And I was wondering whether or not there was going to be something. Well, Trump comes out and says, we had a really great phone call. It was 2 hours. They are now willing to discuss a ceasefire. Okay. I am optimistic that there are conversations. I don't think that militarily, and look, what do I know? I don't know anything about this. Militarily, it does seem like a meat grinder. And so if it's a meat grinder, then, you know, who knows what there is to be won. And then also it's like we border on the level of nation building if our entire point is to like bankrupt Russia and send Vladimir Putin, you know, into the arms of the starving masses of Moscow. I'm going to say that I like Putin. I think Putin's a very, very bad guy. But it seems to me like some kind of cessation of hostilities is possible from afar, knowing nothing about this. But it sure feels like Putin's tapping him along. A lot of meetings about other meetings, about how they should have meetings. Not a lot getting done. And that's the one thing that Trump is supposed to be the guy for. He's not the meetings for the sake of meetings guy. He's the let's make the deal. What do you want? What do they want? Now, this is Trump's process. We'll see. Feels like he's being tapped. Feels like he's being tapped to your boy. Finally, Will, let's play this clip of Kristi Noem.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the Live Free or Die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though,
it has never been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress.
That is Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem struggling to define habeas corpus during a Senate hearing on Tuesday, incorrectly calling it a presidential right to remove people from the country. Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire corrected her, explaining that it protects individuals from being detained without cause. Pressed by Senator Andy Kim, Noem admitted that she didn't know the constitutional article housing the clause. It's Article 1, giving suspension power to Congress, not the president. Noem cited Lincoln's Civil War-era suspension of habeas corpus, but Kim noted courts ruled against him and later suspensions required congressional approval. Noem denied discussing the issue with Trump or advisor Stephen Miller, despite recent White House interest in suspending habeas corpus so they could deport migrants faster. I'm just going to throw it out there. If we're taking bets on first secretary to relinquish their jobs, I'm going to put my money on Kristi Noem. She doesn't seem to make friends particularly well. She's obviously a fighter. She is on television a lot. That's good. But she's got a little mooch in her. She's just, everybody makes their own mental models of how Donald Trump thinks and what he cares about and what he doesn't care about. I'm just saying this. Trump doesn't like it when there are televised embarrassments. And I thought about this before this happened. I'm just saying. Maybe it's a shuffling. That seems to be what Trump likes to do is, just shuffle you to another thing. But I don't know if we get to the midterms with Kristi Noem as the Homeland Secretary. That's all I'm saying. That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes of this show each and every week. And now we get back to Chris Cillizza talking more about the Biden book and some questions about if Jake Tapper's the right guy to write this, assuming he wrote it, which I don't assume. Whether he's the right guy to write his name on it and promote it. All right, here's Cillizza. Let's talk about the authorship of the book. Because I will say that Original Sin, along with Fight, were the 2 books that I had circled on my calendar as a fan of this genre that I really, really wanted to read. And, Barnes and Allen, to me, have the title belt that was vacated by, the Game Change guys. Although, who knows, maybe Mark
Heilman and Halpern. Halpern seems to be on the comeback trail. Maybe
Halpern might have a book deal by the time that, this is all over. He has been rehabilitated from the shadow realm that he was banished to.
Despite never saying sorry or admitting he ever did anything wrong. But that's a whole other separate thing.
Look, man, we're in a world where Harvey Weinstein is doing interviews with Candace Owens. We are through the looking glass on the Me Too era.
Yes, we are.
That being said, Original Sin, when I first saw that it was going to be co-authored, not just by Alex Thompson of Axios, who was a leader in covering this at the time, but also Jake Tapper, I was a little bit of a I don't remember Jake Tapper covering this at the time. now Jake Tapper about as plugged in DC as you're going to get. So maybe there are people that will only talk to Jake Tapper that wouldn't talk to Alex Thompson. Alex Thompson's sources in the Biden, world fractured. Some people really wanted to talk to him. Some people didn't. I have been ever more curious as to why Jake Tapper is the lead in promoting this book. And I think that the lack of contrition at times seemingly at the metaphorical gunpoint to say that maybe he didn't handle things great in the moment has been a head scratcher for me. Obviously, this is a little bit more complicated considering you were a CNN employee. What are your thoughts?
No, I mean, was a CNN employee. Key evidence. They showed me the door. So it's not like okay, so I think I think this is an important book. This is also a book that the authors want zillions of people to read and buy. Mm-hmm. This is a commercial enterprise. They're not getting.
This will be the number one book in the world tomorrow, today.
This book is not free. Yeah. No. They did not just publish it online for anyone to read. It costs $32 or $42 if you're in Canada. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think you can separate the commercial aspect of it. They want to make money from the book. I'm sure they got a pretty decent advance for it. I think it probably will outsell the advance. I mean, this book will make probably Jake richer and Alex rich, or close to it, right?
Yeah.
Given that, I think that this is an impossible question to answer, right? Because it's a hypothetical. If this is called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again by Alex Thompson, does it sell as much as it is going to sell? I think the answer to that is probably no, even if it's the exact same book.
You don't think that it would cause the exact same controversy? You don't think that it would be covered?
I think it would. I think it would. I think it would cause a stir.
Yes.
I think Jake is one of the most recognizable political reporters, anchor, commentator, whatever they call it.
Yeah. Media
in the
figure.
country. You know that name. If I went out on the street in Northern Virginia and I said Jake Tapper, most people would be like, that's a guy from TV, right?
Yeah.
If I went out and I said Alex Thompson, they'd be like, I don't know who that is. And that's not anything against Alex Thompson.
No.
If it said Jake Tapper and Chris Cillizza, the exact same thing would happen.
Yeah.
I mean, so I do think that Jake adds a level of, they have this, if you watch CNN, the book and the excerpts have been all over it. It adds a level when you
he has earned his co-authorship in terms of being out there. He turned the first 5 minutes of State of the Union this Sunday into an infomercial for the book, a monologue infomercial for the book.
And Alex Thompson's a great reporter, but he doesn't have an hour-long show every single day on cable news. And look, we both agree. Cable news is not what it once was. My guess is Jake Tapper probably agrees that cable news is not what it once was. But it's still a pretty big vehicle for people who are interested in this kind of thing.
Yes.
So, I think it's still, to be clear, I still think it would have been a big deal. I don't know if it would be, this has been the Rolls Royce rollout, right? Excerpt in the New Yorker. Audio, it's been farmed out here and there. They're going on Megyn Kelly. Now, could Alex by himself make it on Megyn Kelly? Probably, because the book tells a story that Megyn Kelly wants told, right? She doesn't need Jake's star power.
No, I think he could be out there, and he is a media personality in and of himself. I believe he has a CNN. Yes. Yeah, he has a CNN contract.
CNN deal.
So, yep. So he is on television a lot. He is not on television as much as Jake Tapper. But also, he doesn't have Jake Tapper's baggage. And that's the one thing. The one question is the FaceTime, for which you've made the argument, and that is undeniable. He is on television a lot. He has talked about it a lot. It's not like he has hidden his connection to it. He is very, very much
and
there
that was
to
part
say,
of the deal, to be clear.
That's part of the deal.
That was part of the deal. They probably got a bigger advance. Alex probably made more money with Jake on the advance than Alex would have made on himself, because for anyone who having done this, when you go and you are trying to sell a book, I absolutely was like, I have this many Twitter followers, I'm on TV this much. That's all part and parcel of the deal, right? They are trying to figure out how can this be sold, Right.
Yes.
But to your point, look, I have made videos about this. I have talked about it. I was not covering the White House. I was not an everyday reporter in the White House. I have moved much more into the analysis space. That said, you know, could I, and I think Jake and almost everyone have pushed harder, we did not cover this story perfectly. This book in some ways is an indictment of that fact. Now, I would say, I don't think the right would have you believe we purposely, Jake and the rest of us purposely covered this up because we wanted Biden to win. I do not believe that at all. I certainly know that's not true for me. I mean, I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, what's in this book would have, if this book came out again in May 20th, 2024, I don't know if Joe Biden makes it to that June debate. You know what I mean? Like, it wound up not mattering because of the debate. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we all benefit from saying we did not handle the story as well as we could, with the caveat, and I do want to always say this, everyone on Twitter, especially now, or X, whatever, their response is, how could you not have seen it? Everyone saw it with their eyes and ears. And I always say to people, look, you saying that you think Joe Biden has dementia or Parkinson's or is slowed down or is cognitively impaired on X is not the same thing as Jake Tapper on CNN or even Chris Cillizza on Substack saying Joe Biden has dementia. It's just not the same. There's a way higher bar for that second thing than the first thing. So it's like, yes, I wrote about and said many times that Joe Biden looks slow. He's moving slower. He talks slower. He tells the same stories. But for people who are like, then of course you covered it up. It's like, no, I'm not a doctor. And like, I'm not going to diagnose someone with Parkinson's disease. Like, that's so irresponsible. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
The only problem that I have had, and it kind of built a little bit with Tapper specifically, defending the way that he covered it in a way that said, well, look, I did ask these questions. I did. And it's like, yes, by the letter of the law, you did ask some people these questions. But on balance, the guests that you had on, the tone for which that you pressed each guest with, giving the Biden people full reign to say what their talking points were, and then being extraordinarily critical. And then when people put together, and this is what drove me over the edge, Chris, was when some people on Twitter, which again, it's Twitter, it's a message board. People are allowed to put together whatever. They put a highlight reel of all the times that Jake Tapper was doing things for which are not exemplary for somebody who is talking about himself as a vanguard in covering this issue back when it was happening. And what does CNN do? To me, the thing that CNN should have done and Jake Tapper should have done, just say, hey, look, looking back, he said eventually he looks back with humility. Should have said, I got it wrong. I want to get it right. This is a step toward me getting it right. I want to do that.
That's always been.
That's what you did, right? Instead, what CNN did is put out a super defensive line by line. Here's how these things are deceptively edited, which I'm not to the cheap fakes part of this, but that was literally what the White House did. So you're publishing a book, you're publicizing a book while you're using the exact same tactics that should be reviled by the White House.
Yeah. I think that one, and this is not a criticism of CNN because all mainstream or legacy media does this. We spent so much time perfecting the voice of God. Like, we are telling you how it is, that I think they're so caught up in this that they're not willing to be like, look, we are human beings. This was what I said. Look, I don't have any, I truly am not rooting for or against any of these people. I know partisans find that hard to believe, but I'm just not. I spent my whole life looking at it through this lens of journalism. I'm not rooting for these people. I want to get it right, mostly for ego reasons and business reasons. Because if I get it right, I can say I got it right.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I'm not in the business of getting it wrong. That doesn't do me any good. Like, even if you don't believe me, believe like I'm an independent guy. Like, I need to make money.
The humiliation should motivate you. The humiliation of being wrong should motivate.
And so my view is like, both of these things can be true. You were not maliciously intended to cover up for Joe Biden. I was not. And I didn't do a good enough job pressing hard enough, given the visual test, right? The eye test, and then some of the reporting that particularly the Wall Street Journal and some Alex at Axios was doing. To me, you gain credibility if you say that. I am not perfect. I'm a human. I have not gotten any of this perfectly right, but that is not proof that I have this master scheme where I'm trying to elect Joe Biden, right? Like, I feel like they can't, a lot of these bigger outlets, it's like, if we admit any little human error, it will be proof that there's a grand scheme, and there isn't. It's human beings making the best decisions they can.
You know, Chris, I have found this one of the craziest things since I was in journalism school, is that reporters, and I would say media figures as well, that now I don't pick up the phone and call people and put them in weird positions. But that's what I used to do. That's what I used to do as a journalist. I would go to people who are oftentimes having their worst day, especially when you're in crime.
It's a job.
And you have to ask them tough questions. You have to put them in positions that they don't want to be in for the benefit of the public good. That's the point of being a reporter. And yet, reporters and media figures hate having those tables turned on them. And that is one of the most, one of the most like paradoxical things. If I were running my own journalism conservatory, one of the things that I would do is have everybody at some point be diving deep into their classmates' personal business and publishing it for everybody else in the class. Because you have to burn up, you have to understand, at least from the humility perspective, hey, how would I like to be treated when the shoe is on the other foot? It's crazy to me.
It is remarkable how, and I very much am in this, put myself at the front of this line, how thin-skinned reporters are about themselves.
Yes.
It is one of the most common traits. And yet you expect other people to be thick-skinned and never get offended when you're on the asking questions.
When you act like the source you hate. Like if you were to get a bunch of reporters in a room and say, what's a great source? What's a bad source? The bad source is the one that hears one wrong thing that they don't like and they start screaming at you and then they spread rumors about you forever. Yep. Journalists do that all the friggin' time.
And it's also, by the way, why I think journalists have very much a love-hate relationship with media reporters. Mm-hmm. They love, so I'll give you, this is a great example. I used to, I think I'm going to bring this back, but when I worked for the Washington Post, I did a thing called the Worst Week in Washington, where it was in the Outlook section every Sunday. And it would basically just be like, it was like 250 words or whatever. And it was literally what it said. Like, this is the person who had the worst week in Washington. And you know who loved that section? Everyone who wasn't the person. And you know who hated it? The person. The people who loved it, if it wound up eventually, because I wrote it every week, so everybody got in the barrel at some point. It was like, you just told me how much you love this. Now I'm an unfair, terrible person because I'm writing about you. Yeah. And inevitably when reporters were in that, which is awkward, candidly, for me, because there were definitely times when it was like, I think it was like one time where I had to do Woodward. Because Woodward had done something. Bob Woodward had done something. Yeah. And Bob Woodward basically, like, Bob Woodward, Don Graham, and Catherine Graham and Ben Bradley basically built the Washington Post.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, okay, we're going to have to, we had looked for every other option. And Bob was like the shining beacon. Like, you had to do him. Like, you wouldn't have any credibility if you didn't do Bob, because it would be obvious you were passing over it because Bob worked there.
Yeah.
And it was like super uncomfortable. I had to like reach out to him and be like, hey, Bob, this is Bob Woodward. You know what I mean? Like, he's like the most famous political reporter. And I had to like send him a note like, hey man, just FYI. And he, to his credit, was fine.
Yes.
But typically journalists, when I did that, went bananas. How could you do this? You narc.
Yeah.
And it's, there's a lot of punch pulling. And to be honest, Justin, I feel it sometimes, right? It's like, look, CNN laid me off, but like, I don't go out. There are shows on CNN and other channels where I'm like, this is garbage. Like, this is making us stupider. Mm-hmm. But I don't really go out and
trash
do it. No. Part of that is because it feels a little gratuitous, like it's not really necessary. But there is part of it because it's like, well, I don't really want to be the turd in the punch bowl, even though I'm not in that world anymore. People are like, how was your White House Correspondents' Dinner weekend? I'm like, I drove my kid to Timonium, Maryland, so we could play soccer. Like, I'm not really in that world anymore. But I still feel that pull.
I did miss you at the Substack party, though.
I did not go to the Substack.
I know, yeah.
It
I
was
missed you there. I was there. I was wondering where you were.
It was the black tie thing that threw me off there. I'm not wearing a tuxedo anymore in my life. I feel like I've moved past that time in my life. But no, you are right. I just, again, humility, a little humility goes a long way. Very few of us had this story exactly right. And by the way, I think that goes for the conservative media too. Like, just banging the drum and insisting that Joe Biden has dementia. Okay, well, now this book comes out and it shows he did have some decline. Like, I'm not sure that you were right, because you said like Hillary Clinton had dementia and Bill, like, if you say something long enough, I guess, like, it's like if Donald Trump eventually comes out that Donald Trump had some cognitive decline, the left media is going to be like, see? And it's like, but it's like, what evidence do we have here? Like, I mean, anyone got it exactly right is my point.
I guess that's the thing, is the point isn't that anybody nailed it. The point is that I do think that, and this goes back to the Tapper thing during his 5-minute monologue on State of the Union, where he's talking about, the decline of Joe Biden. The one thing that struck me, and this is something that I was in a unique position to talk about because I watched 4 24-hour cable news channels for the entirety of the election in a quad.
Why you are like you are now.
Yes, I know. Yeah, this is. I've done uncalculable damage to my infant daughter's raising because my brain. I know. I'm like Joe Biden before and after 22. Like, there's a noticeable decline afterward. But I watched how they were covered, and it's like Jake Tapper is doing a Fox News monologue this Sunday. The same Fox News monologue that Jesse Waters did, the same Fox News monologue that Sean Hannity did, or during the daytime that they were doing about Joe Biden. And now it is safe. Now it can be told. Now it's like, and look, they did the reporting. There are a bunch of Biden people that are unnamed, but I trust that they have enough people there that it is true. That being said, the left and right element of this is understandable in politics, but it's not the framework to judge accuracy.
No. Like, and again, like what you said, I think is the right thing, which was which is what I've tried to say too, is, did I get this exactly right? No. In retrospect, I was too willing to accept he's fine. How dare you, you ageist? Yeah. Where I probably wouldn't have been if it was Donald Trump. And like we started on, and to connect these two things, I am now going to do my level best to not make that mistake again and to do everything I can to shine a light on the mistakes that I made going forward. And to me, like, they wrote a book about it. Like, it's not like Jake suddenly is like, and we now know that Biden's got, like, they put, I mean, I don't know if it was 50-50, 60-40, like, but the point is,
I'm going to take a wild guess. I have in my head how much each person wrote, but we can leave that for another day.
Like, they did put the work in. So I just think like this obsession with, and politicians do this too. And you know what? Journalists shouldn't do it because we criticize politicians doing it. And I find myself doing it. Like, if you look at everything I've written over the last 10 years, okay, in my mind, when I think about it now, I'm like, well, I broadly was right, but there's like definitely, and people on X point this out to me all the time, there are definitely, I wrote 4 things a day for the last decade, right? So there's a lot out there.
Yes.
There's definitely times where like I was wrong, like the conclusions I was drawing were wrong. But in your mind, I always say this, I think you and I have talked about this maybe offline before, but I think of this all the time for journalism, politics, and life. You're always the hero of your own story.
Of course. Yeah.
You're not the shitty employee. It's those damn bosses who don't understand how much work you do. No one thinks they're the bad employee.
No.
Even if they are demonstrably the bad employee. When I got laid off of CNN, I was like, how can you fire a star from CNN? You're in your own head. And I think politicians do this. Like there's a tendency.
Oh, yeah.
It's like when they do the dot, the like polling, and it's like, they have all the dots of where the different polls are, and they do the curve, the curve that kind of like manages, this is what we think it is. We do that in our own minds. It's like you've got all these disparate data points where sometimes you were right and sometimes you were dead wrong. Sometimes you were kind of right, kind of wrong. But the curve that you draw always makes you look good.
Yeah.
I think it's human nature, but I think we have to guard against that, because my thing I always say to people who accuse me of being a partisan, I'm sure this happens to you too, is like, dude, all my stuff is public. Like,
yeah,
you can go search Chris Cillizza. There's literally a zillion articles. And I think you could absolutely find some, and especially tweets, if we include that, where I look like I won't swear, but a moron.
Yeah.
And I'm wrong. Objectively wrong. My point is, okay, in the broad sweep, am I trying to get it right when I'm wrong? Am I acknowledging I'm wrong, explaining why I'm wrong, trying to avoid being wrong again? Like, that's all that, for someone like me, I feel like that's all I can do, because I'm not going to not ever be wrong again. Like, I mean...
And this is where I think we can end the conversation about the Tapper side of it, because this is what rubbed me wrong. And this is what I will say for our modern internet age, where, and it doesn't matter if you're on TV, if you're on radio, if you're a newspaper, if you're blogging, if you're or if you're doing Substack like us, doesn't matter. We are all choices to the consumer. We all are a thing that they are going to choose to fill their day with or not fill their day with, which means we need to justify ourselves to them more than ever. And when you are defensive, you are not doing it. And I think that there was a huge moment lost for Tapper to not begin this tour by saying, here's what I got wrong. Here's why I believe I got it wrong. Here's what I endeavored to get right going forward. Here's how I want to shape my coverage doing that. It's a reason why I wanted to have you on when you did your thing on CNN, or about, how you covered stuff both on CNN and in Substack, because I was like, that matters. Humans all screw up. And we all want to believe that we can do that. And whenever people model that behavior, I think it's always worthwhile. When I had people on this show that were predicting all sorts of stuff during the election, the people that I wanted to have on the most were the people that got stuff wrong, not because I wanted to embarrass them, not because I wanted to parade them in front of everybody, but because I think that's the time that you can really bind yourself to an audience, whether or not they agree with you. When you say, like Ed Germentum, one of the people who writes on Substack, he had a whole thing. You called him a
I must have done something to him. No, but I didn't mean to.
I know what it was. You called him a middle of the road or moderate.
Is that
thing.
Not right? I don't know.
No, he's a progressive guy. So, but you would be. I think his writing is clear-headed and funny. And that's why I like having him on. But he had a bunch of predictions.
Tell him that I like his work, by the way. Like, I know he doesn't like me, which is totally fine, but I really admire his work anyway.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole nother. I think you're a cartoon for a lot of, especially the political sphere. You're like goofy. Like you're not a real person.
No.
You're a thing that represents
by the way,
something
that
else.
Allows people to be. A woman yesterday told me on Twitter that she hoped I got cancer because I wasn't empathetic enough about Joe Biden. I'm like, how do you?
People aren't real.
Who does that? I know that's a thing, but it's anyway. No, I'm with you. And you know what? One quick thing. We have a massive trust problem in journalism. Massive. Mm-hmm. And to simply say, well, that's because Donald Trump says fake news. That's not right. Donald Trump clearly doesn't help it. But we have a massive trust problem. And we have to start. If we cannot be trusted, if there aren't people that people trust to be referees at some level, we are in a bad place societally.
Yeah.
We have to take it into our hands journalistically to say, we're going to rebuild trust with you. And the way that I think one of the core ways that you do it is to say, I will continue to get things wrong.
Yeah.
I promise that to you. Which may seem weird, because you're right, we all want people to read our stuff and pay for it. But I am telling you that because I want you to know it is not malicious. It is not in support of an agenda that I'm not going to explain to you. It's because I'm a human, And I'm making judgment calls every day based on what my best thoughts and practices in my years of journalism. But those aren't always a good guide. And when I get things wrong, the other thing that I pledge to is I will say, I got it wrong. And here's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
To get me to this wrong conclusion. It wasn't just I wanted to do it because Joe Biden's great and Donald Trump is terrible. And I will also work in that process to not make that mistake again. Now, will I make other mistakes? Yes, I will.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who tells you that they won't is bullshitting you. But
yes.
I think that that's a core thing. It's easier for people like us, I think, now to do because it's like, I don't have to, if I wanted to say I screwed up my coverage and I was still at CNN, do you know how many, first of all, they would never greenlight that. I mean, they just wouldn't. It's just not going to happen. But let's say they did. I mean, it would take from the day I decided I want to do this to the day that it happened, which would never come. But let's say it did. I mean, it'd be months.
Yeah.
And you know how long it took me to do? I was like, you know what? Like, I've been thinking a lot about this. I think I owe it to people to be honest. I'm not going to just beat myself up and say I got everything wrong, but I am going to be honest about what I got wrong. It took, that video was like 9 minutes long. It took 9 minutes and that was it. Like, it's easier for us because our ships are smaller so we can steer them a little bit easier. But
I think you have just explained to me in the most compelling way possible why Tapper handled this the way that he handled this. Because if it was going to be months for you, I can't imagine what it would be for somebody that is the hood ornament of that network like Jake Tapper.
It's very hard. I really do. And I'm not making excuses for him or for anyone. I mean, look, it's the Spider-Man thing. With great power comes great responsibility. Jake makes a bunch of money. He's very high profile. Same thing with Anderson. Same thing with, Scarborough, right? Like, so I'm not making excuses for them. It's just, you have to realize, particularly now, these things are owned by these massive media conglomerates or a billionaire. And
and they're all worried about their budgets. That's the other thing. It's like in a bygone era, it was printing money. And now it's like everybody wonders whether or not they're going to get bought out tomorrow, especially those big contracts. If you're a Jake Tapper, if you're an Anderson Cooper, like, those are line items that especially for somebody who's cost conscious, like David Zaslav at the head of that organization, the top of that corporate org chart. I don't know.
You mean David Zaslav, who makes $50 million a year? But anyway, that's a side. I have a whole David Zaslav rant. But what I would generally say is, look, even when you wanted to do something, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
And then we'll go, because I know people don't care that much about it. At CNN, they have a very strict paid speaking policy. You really can't do it because they view, I think this is ridiculous and outdated, but they and this is true at NBC, it's true at the Washington Post, true at the New York Times. You can't speak to any, like, let's say the Chicken Broilers of America, the trade association, wanted Kristi Noem to come in and literally have the exact conversation you and I have just had.
Yeah.
I would go to them, the CNN standards and ethics people, and I'd be like, hey, the Chicken Broilers want to pay me $5,000 to give this speech. I'm not going to say anything I wouldn't say publicly. And it would go through weeks of back and forth. I mean, I one time wanted to go speak at North Carolina. It was University of North Carolina. All they were doing was paying for me to fly down their coach.
Yeah.
It was a day speak. No. So my point is like these bureaucracies, it's not as though Jake Tapper or Scarborough or any of these people really can just decide, like, you know what, I've had a change of heart. I'm going to go on YouTube and make an essay about it like I did. I could never have done that when I was at CNN. I mean, it's just these bureaucracies work to protect themselves. And by themselves, I mean their profits. And they're not in the business of, let's have one of our show horses, one of our most well-known people go out there and be like, hey, this giant story, I didn't do a good job on it. They're just not, because the other thing too is there's so many bad faith actors. Like, let's say Jake did say that. I mean, when I did mine and I'm a bug on Jake Tapper, right? I'm a bug on Jake Tapper's rear. Like, I'm nothing. All these people still are like, bullshit. Who cares? You're just covering for, like, no, there are so many bad faith actors. It's not as though you say that and people are like,
But this is the other problem with reporters and journalists is that we look to message boards, like the place before there was a World Wide Web. There were BBNet, where there was somebody who was a particle physicist who said, "Oh, look, I just did some particle physics science," and somebody said, "Fake." Like that's the history of a message board.
So depressing.
And we are so ego deprived. We are so ego deprived.
Yes,
because I got this. Same as you did, because I put out my thing on Sunday and I did my thing on, Joe Biden.
I saw your thing. Yes.
I wish him the best, but also, come on, what the hell are we doing here? And I got the first thing and from my subscribers. Hey, well, this sounded like a Glenn Beck monologue. This is your MAGA arc, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I am an old growth internet person, so I understand that this is the kind of stuff that happens. I'm here to, once my take is out into the world, I'm at peace with it. It is not for me to judge how people react to it. That is their own world. I know that the only thing I can do is deliver consistency from my point of view to the world. But when all you do, and this is even more so when you are in the internet content creation world, it's a lonely thing, because for you guys, we're voices in your heads. But for us, we're putting messages in a bottle and throwing them out into the sea. And we have no idea what happens. We hit post and then we're done. So it's hard to not look out into the world that is consuming your stuff. And if people say, screw you, then to not take it personally. But at the same time, you can't.
And the other thing that's hard is like, look, when I wrote something at CNN that some people disagreed with, guess what? My CNN check still cashed exactly the same. They didn't subtract money from it.
Yeah.
Here in this world, like I lost a bunch of subscribers over the last 72 hours. My view effectively is they probably were going to leave at some.
Yes.
I always say this. If your need to subscribe, to pay me for my journalism must agree with him at all times, you should 100% not subscribe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need the $6 that bad. Like, because you're going to be unhappy because I'm not solving for right things that you're always going to agree with. I'm solving
I would like to say for you and for me, subscribe.
Take.
I will take your money until you decide to not subscribe, but you will unsubscribe. You will unsubscribe.
People will be like, not what I subscribed for. And I'm like, well, what did you subscribe for? Because I've never said, my line that I say ad infinitum, and it's annoying as hell, is calling balls and strikes no matter what uniform the batter at the plate is wearing. It's not a perfect analogy, but that's how I view it. So it's like, so you came in to it because you saw a post where I was critical of Donald Trump and you just assumed I was, no, that's never been on offer. That's not it. So, but it's hard because there is a direct financial tie to this. What I would say to people is, if you agree with someone writing on Substack or talking on Substack or talking on YouTube or whatever, 100% of the time, they are 100% selling you something. We are selling the broad sweep. Go back and look at what we've said over the years, right?
Yeah.
They are selling you, become a subscriber, become a founder, give me $500, give me more, give me this, give me that. And it's like, dude, you are being worked by these people.
Yeah. And look, there's always a room for partisan press. There's been a room for partisan press.
But that's not us.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, we are media personalities. And so what we are both in the world of saying, hey, look, we've been around for a while. We've seen the ebbs and flows. We are obsessive junkies about this kind of stuff. And we've read a lot. So what you would hope from us is that we're going to bring up Joe Biden's plagiarism scandal in 1988 so we can understand how he handles. Exactly.
Yeah.
Am I the first Kinnock in a generation that we have that knowledge?
I didn't realize you had a Neil Kinnock impersonation in your bag. That's a
there
deep
we go.
cut.
I'm telling you, that's why you have to come to this type of nerd. That's why we exist. So, but that's what you want, and hopefully at some point you understand our personalities. We become somebody that for whom you're like. You see news and you say, oh, I wonder what Kristi Noem thinks about it. I wonder what Justin thinks about it.
That's it.
And that's all that matters. And so it's like, if we're putting that out, that's what we can offer. The one thing that you can do to totally screw it up is that when things get rocky, and I would say over the last 48 hours, it's like, it was a little rocky initially. I was very happy to see that I wasn't totally out on an island because I was pretty early because I had to do a show for Sunday.
Mine came out right after yours came out, I think.
Yeah. And so it's like, I always do a show on Sunday. So I'm like, all right, this is big enough news. I have to lead with it and I'm going to put it out for free. But like, I was happy to see that the rest of the media wasn't like Joe Biden, like in like we all are sitting here in somber reflection.
Anyone who talks about anything other than this diagnosis is a terrible person.
Yeah. But don't worry. Friends, we will be all talking about things that aren't Joe Biden because Joe Biden isn't the president. And that's the argument on the other side is that yes, and Donald Trump. And this is the only thing that I will leave.
Walk and chew gum. We can do both.
This is what I will say to anybody who has made that point. If you are frustrated that Donald Trump lists his height and weight the same as Derrick Henry, if you are frustrated that he has a doctor that looks like he sells medical marijuana licenses on Venice Beach, or that his other doctor became a sitting member of Congress and is obviously a political figure.
Dr. Ronnie.
That this is the kind of stuff that you should care about. And you should care about it when it's your side so you can say, look, I'm taking a principled stand on this. And then I would also say, if you are a Democrat and you want a Democrat to win in your congressional district, in your Senate seat, in the White House in 2028, you need to distance yourself from this. Because 100%. This is not something that's defensible. It's something that you want to turn the page on, that America is sick of. And if you don't do it, it's going to have a political cost. And so this is politics. And It is something that I'm looking at the calculus. Run from Joe Biden.
I think
truth and reconciliation.
I think that there's been a lot of like hedging, like Pete Buttigieg being like, maybe it would have been better if he didn't run. Like if I was someone who was like an ambitious Democrat who wasn't as well known and wanted to make my name and wants to run 2020, I would totally come out and be like, look, I've read the book. I take it at its word. Joe Biden and his people were engaged in an active cover-up. It's inexcusable if a Republican had done this. It's inexcusable if a Democrat had done this. We need to move beyond this. And I'm going to make it my job over the next 3 years to convince people that Democrats are to be trusted. And the way that we start is by saying this was 100% wrong, period, doesn't matter the party. Like, just from a political advantage point of view, I would do that. You would get a ton of attention.
Somebody is, and they are going to be rewarded for it.
Yeah.
That is my takeaway.
Be smart too.
Chris Cillizza, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
I love doing it. Thank you for having
taking
me.
That Neil Kinnock impression, and I needed you to draw it out of me, and I'm very, very
I just
happy.
don't have that. I don't have that in my bag. I've got like a Trump and a few others, but I can't go that. I mean, it's like, do you have like a Dick Gebhardt impersonation that you're not telling people about? This is Dick Gebhardt in 1987 at the Iowa caucuses. He might have sounded a little bit like this.
Folks, where can people go get your Substack? Where are they going for that?
So it's chriscillizza.substack.com, or my last name is Cillizza, which I know is not how it sounds. Or just type "so what" in Substack, or my name in Substack. I also am making videos every day on YouTube. I'm almost to 100,000 YouTube subscribers.
Look at that.
Check that out. So yeah, apparently my kids tell me you get a plaque if you get to 100,000 subscribers. YouTube sends you like a thing.
You do.
So I'm psyched for the plaque. I'm all about the token appreciation. I'm all about the plaque.
This is a 1 million sub plaque.
Okay,
a friend of mine.
Okay.
Well, no,
I
am a part of another.
Thanks so much.
I am a part of another channel. This is kind of stolen valor, but there's a funny story behind it. But
hey,
so
Chris,
you
you're
get a plaque
100,000.
like that.
That's really sweet. That's
it's cute.
Really, it's a cute little thing.
No, I am nowhere near that. You are blowing me away when it comes
YouTube
to
project?
YouTube
That's
subs.
Sweet.
You are blowing me away when it comes to YouTube subs. Chris Cillizza, thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks, Justin.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Will Saddleberg is our editor. theyoungamerican@gmail.com if you want to send me anything that you find on the internet. Tell me I'm nice, I'm bad, I'm good. It's up to you. YouTube is politics, politics, politics. I did not get this YouTube plaque that I pointed out for politics, politics, politics. For the record, if you do not know the story of why I have a 1 million sub YouTube plaque in my background, it was given to me as a gag, although I have appeared on the channel for which it is. It is for the Modern Rogue, which I've been a guest on, and currently one of my podcasts, Great Night, does air live on that channel. But I got the plaque because my co-host on Great Night and the creator of Modern Rogue, Brian Brushwood, we do the Great Night podcast. He once got me a gaming mouse for Christmas, which I joked he just bought 5 gaming mouses and gave them out to his friends so he could justify buying a high-end gaming mouse for himself. And then on the podcast joked, what's next? What's my next Christmas present? A 1 million sub plaque for the Modern Rogue. And what was my next Christmas present but a 1 million sub plaque for the Modern Rogue? And so I figured if I have a 1 million sub YouTube plaque, I might as well put it up on the wall behind me so it looks like I'm more impressive. But it is stolen valor, and Chris Cillizza has a lot more YouTube subscribers than I do. Do you want that to be the case forever? Well, I don't think so. I think you want us to get us a little competitive with Cillizza. Head on over, youtube.com/politics, politics, politics. That's where a video version of this program happens each and every episode. Look, you can support us with a one-time donation, but I don't even want to get into it, man, because I explicitly said that this experiment we had a few episodes ago where I wanted to see who listens to the end of the show. And so if you listen to the end of the show, send $1 on paypal.me/payjury or Venmo Justin-Young-20 or on Cash App PX3Cash. And then we conducted it more than I thought. Listen to the show. And I sent all those dollars back. And then what happened? People kept sending dollars. I said, stop it. If you are doing it for the bit, don't do it. And what do I get? Elliot, I'm not sending you $1. But you did, Elliot. You did send me $1. How about Peter? Peter said Biden's cancer, which I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. How about Heath? Heath sent me $1.01. He said, stop sending the dollar. So he sent me $1.01. That was just on Venmo. That was just Venmo Justin-Young-20. What about Cash App? What kind of disrespect did I get on Cash App? Well, I'll tell you what we got on Cash App. Oh, how about this? Kenneth says, keep it, you joker. Oh, that's not a right way. And he sent me $5. Randy sent me $9 for always being a gentleman and a scholar. Jared said for TBH, we'd be better off listening to white noise. All right. Better off listening to white noise. How about this? Okay. You want to know what? I'm done arguing. If you send me money to either paypal.me/payjury, Venmo Justin-Young-20, or Cash App PX3Cash, that is letter P, letter X, number 3 cash. If you send me money on those platforms, they need to be for pure intentions. Pure intentions only. A lot of spite money coming my way. I don't need that spiritual karma. I don't need you to be sending me, spite money. No. Anybody who sends me money needs to declare pure intentions that you are doing this purely out of the goodness of your heart, okay? Purely out of the good. I don't want any ulterior motives. I see you right now. I see you right now. You're going to your phone right now and you're just going to send me $1 and you're going to say ulterior motives. I said, don't you do it. Don't you do it. If you want, you can always support us in the place where it matters the most and the place where it benefits you the most. And that is takepoliticsseriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. That is roughly $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. 150 episodes. If you go annual, 150 episodes of PX3, over 150 actually, for under $100. But if you want your name read on the show, well, you need to go to our phantasmic founding Finns. We got to get a better name, L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah, Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes. Oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Chuckers, Gloria. Just text me, Mom. You don't need to comment on Facebook. Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? One place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. On Friday's edition of the show, we will talk more foreign policy. Ryan Macbeth joins us for the first time in a minute. We'll talk India, Pakistan. We will talk Ukraine, Russia. We will talk Israel and Hamas. Lot to get to on the military side. Always like having Ryan on. Till then, is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics. Others talk about politics. Still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.